Today we have here Martin from Macedonia, from Prilep. If we are more specific, from Prilep, Karavnica. I think you are familiar with this area. Did everybody flew already in Prilep, in Kruševo? Kruševo is the place where you should go.
Nobody.
Everybody or nobody? Of course, huh? Yeah. So you are also familiar with Martin. You know him. In my opinion, Martin is at the moment one of the best flatland pilots. This is just my opinion. Yeah, I saw him, what he is capable to do, how he is thinking, how he understands the situation in the flatland. So this is really my opinion. Hopefully he will share with us a little bit about this as well. I don't know what he will speak about. He told me yesterday that maybe he will maybe overlaps a little bit with Jovanoski, but I always give the free hands with all the presentations to the pilots. So this way I think it's the best, that the hands are free, that they can do whatever they want, and this way they can share the things which they most the best. So here is Martin Jovanoski from Macedonia, and he will do the presentation today. Enjoy.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't really want to introduce myself too much. I've been here last year. We had nice presentation about actually how to get ready to the point where you need to compete or you can compete. And from the first moment when Gasper asked me to do a lecture again this year, I thought probably the best is to follow up from last year. And from last year's training at home, now we go to the competition, and this lecture should be about those that are going to their first comps or even the first comp, what to do, and maybe something for those that already have been on few comps. Just many things that are already said in many points, but this is very key points to remember from time to time and refresh our knowledge. I will start with as usual. The competitions are not only at the flying side. The competitions are at home also. Before going on a competition, you have to get ready. It's really pointless to go somewhere and be totally lost. That's not much of a competition, it's more of a sightseeing, let's say. So, first, why do we do comps? There is two worlds at the moment. Many people really like competition flying, many people don't really like competition flying. But for me, definitely going on comps, it's one of the crucial things how to become a better pilot in general. Competitions are most importantly very fun. You meet a lot of new people, you meet a lot of good pilots, you go on new places, discovering new places, new cultures. So I think it's not only always just with the competition and pressure and stuff like that. Competitions are very fun, of course, if you allow them to be fun and to be not too stressed. Another point is you progress quite fast during competitions, not only because you fly a lot, but also you hear a lot of opinions. Now in the recent times there is comps like this. After the Serial Cup show up, a few others copied and they try to do lectures again and again. So this is very useful. There is always something to learn. And there is always something to learn from anyone, not only experienced pilots, but also somebody totally new might have something that you forgot or you didn't know. So you progress very good during comps. But another thing is safety. Competitions are probably these days the safest way to fly, and to fly a lot. There is people that care about your safety, from weather-wise to I don't know, helicopter rescues, to many pilots in the air. If you crash, that can see you and locate you very fast. So flying competitions is definitely one of the safest and cheapest way to fly a lot and to progress and have fun. While I'm on safety, the rest of the presentation is really much about competitions and how to do a better result. But I must say that none of the results are that important as the safety. So once you are on a competition or even at your home flying site, nothing matters more than your ability to fly tomorrow and the day after and the day after. So despite all the efforts that we're gonna do now to present how to do a better result, keep in mind that the result is not the most important. Okay, we're gonna start from before the comp at home. Gear check is one of the most important things. Gear check and gear changes should not be done at the competition site. This definitely disturbs your routine, this definitely disturbs your flying style and all the rest of the things. You're not focused on the competition, you're focused on your gear, which is really something not necessary. Try to find some time to prepare all the equipment, especially harness setup, speed bar setup. Check your instruments. For those that goes to a competition for the first time and have new instruments or something like that, try to learn how to use that instrument on your own. I know that it's much easier to go on the site and ask for the pilots to help you and show you, but this is not the fastest way to learn. Try to learn your instruments at home. Do some tasks. For example, sitting at your sofa and then go at the comp and still check with the more experienced pilots if you're doing things right on your instrument. But never go there unready. Another very important thing is to check your flying spot. Of course, if you're going to a familiar area, this makes it only important to check weather, of course. But if you're going to somewhere new place, now these days with the OLCs and so many tasks done on all the competitions that usually, on all the places where the competitions are usually done, I think it's very, very useful and very easy to analyze the place a bit, check what is the general flying at least, how the tasks were done in the past, and just to have some idea of the flying place. This helps a lot from the first day when you come there to not be really lost. Okay, we fly that direction or this direction, and it's very easy these days. Competition rules are something again super important and should be checked at home. If you want to go on a competition, especially to be competitive and to get some result, you really have to know the rules. You cannot compete in something that you don't know how to compete in. So checking the competition rules and especially the local rules, after a while you get to know the rules, but many places have very specific local rules which will help you a lot to not end up in a situation where you don't know what to do exactly. So checking at the rules, it's very important and something that many pilots don't do. At the last World Cup in Switzerland, we had 3 of the top 10 pilots in goal. Unfortunately, having invalid task just because they keep their instruments on the same rules as they flew the World Championships, and they didn't change it to the World Cup rules, which was one thing with the FAI sphere or VGS 86 calculating of the cylinders. So they end up without valid track lock. They didn't catch the turn points. Once we go at the site, it's super good if you have the time and go a day early or 2 days early, depending on the weather and your availability, and make a training flight. It's not much of a training, it's more of a flight to check out the area, to see what's happening, to connect the things that you saw at your place with the analysis of the place and the usual tasks. We have less and less training days at the competitions now, but that doesn't stop you just to go there and make a flight. Even if you don't do cross country, just to see the takeoff, get ready, get above launch. It's a huge help for the next days. Another important point is, now we go to the competitive part again. Pilots. You need to know who is there, what they are flying. This will help you a lot later if in case you're in the fight for the first spots, but also it will help you even if you're on your first comp, just to have in mind who to watch for and to recognize them in the air. Usually it's very helpful if you know most of the people, but that's difficult to know. But if you ask around and check who are the local pilots, most important, and then who are the good pilots at this comp, will be very helpful if you can recognize them in the air. Registration and general briefing are another very key points, but often underestimated by the pilots. The general briefing is a really good point to refresh your memory about the rules, but also most of the safety stuff is said there. This is extremely important, not that much from a competition side, but from safety side. And also often things like retrieve and the general schedule are set there, which will help you to organize and plan your days of the competitions in the future. So try to be present at the general briefings, although they are lately they are mandatory. But I see organizing comps, I see a lot of people not being there and then having problems after that. So be there at time, register at time. None of the organizers wants you to register in the morning before the task or super late in the evening. So this is just extra effort for them, and you're losing a lot of points between your colleagues and the organizers. It's not so nice. Once on takeoff, during the comp, of course, for the first task, it's very crucial point to get there early, catch the first transport that they offer you, get there on time, prepare all the equipment and everything, to have a lot of time later to be relaxed, very important, but also to do some analysis of the weather, check with other pilots, check the weather forecast even on takeoff if you can, because the weather changes very fast. We have seen that these days, and if you end up at the top quite late and you're busy with preparing the equipment, then you will not see that the shade is coming and end up as 50 more pilots did the first task on the ground. So it was very good thermals, sunny weather. So the first pilots went in and it was thermally nice, and I could see many pilots super relaxed on the first task because the weather was great. But many of them probably didn't saw that the shade is coming very fast, and if you are not ready, or if you didn't keep mind in what's happening around you, then you end up on the ground. If you were aware, then you hurry up a bit, take off, and unfortunately that task was not valid, but it was really bad position to be in if the task was valid, sitting at the takeoff. So this will help you a lot to focus on the task and not to focus on getting ready or then missing something what's happening in meantime. Taking off, It's another crucial point. I see many beginner pilots really looking forward to taking off late. Sometimes it's because they cannot really fly for too many hours. But this is not so true. If you take off early, then you will have time to relax in the air. If you take off late, then it's very tense, so of course it's more difficult. Another point is, often I see many pilots taking off super late if the conditions are difficult, which is totally wrong. The more difficult the day is, the earlier you should take off, just to have enough time to put yourself in a good position on the start cylinder. That doesn't mean, of course, if it's big shade and then you take off first. This is not the smartest way usual. So as soon as you see some pilots are going up, try to be early in the air, even if the conditions are super weak. Once in the air, on the start cylinder, I do this quite often and it works for me. This means for the whole presentation. It doesn't need to be like that, but it's just my personal opinion. I really like to get fast up to the cloud base once in the air. This makes you be alive again, go into a competition mode, start thinking what's happening, but also gives you quite a lot of time once you are at the cloud base to relax and monitor the conditions, the pilots, and everything else. Having early takeoff, but not really rushing to the cloud base also work, but sometimes you can end up in having not enough time. So I prefer to go to put effort and go as fast as possible to the takeoff, to the cloud base, sorry, and then relax at the cloud base and wait there and monitor the conditions and the pilots. Somewhere around, if you are higher, if you're closer to cloud base, then probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you're a bit lower, 20 minutes, it's enough to go into a race mode. This means that now you fight for every meter. I'm not saying fighting in the gaggle, but you fight to climb as fast as possible, looking at the thermals outside of the one that you are or the other clouds, and trying to put yourself into a race mode, into a race position. Often this time is quite enough, but on a weekdays it's good if you monitor the cycluses of the clouds, which will allow you to put yourself in a good position. So race mode, 15 minutes before the gate opens. It usually helps you to get into the mood and be at the takeoff, at the start cylinder on time. Once in the race, we spoke that last year one of the key points to be a good pilot is observation skills. Of course, this matters even more into the race. You have 100 pilots around you that are marking every meter of air, so try to observe, and the most important, keep everybody at your side. Don't look just in front of you, which is often a mistake, especially on a slow task, but also keep on what's happening behind you, on the side of you, below you, because with so many pilots in the air is marked so well, and quick transitions to a better line or a better thermal, it's crucial. And having the ability to observe the pilots, the other pilots, will help you a lot. This is one of the crucial points to get a good result. Be a wimp. This is not the style that I prefer, but this is the style that gives results, unfortunately. But also it's very important point, especially when you're not skilled enough to look and lead and to look for thermals on your own. Be a wimp means that the best option is, of course, to have few guys in front of you, and at the beginning of the race especially, to not make too many decisions on your own. It's very important to not isolate yourself from the group. The group almost always flies better, faster, and it's really not much point to get rid of the group so early in the race. It's important to know when to push, of course, not only when to wait, but pushing means that you also need to have the skills. I always recommend when you're at the beginning of your competition career or on the beginning of your flying career to monitor more and follow more than to push. Pushing is very good and very important, but something that you should train at home when you're alone, looking for the thermals and trying to, as nobody's in the air, of course. But while you're in the competition, for sure you're gonna fly faster if you have somebody in front of you. Once you have this ability to look for better thermals or just to have idea where to go, what are the trigger points and where can be the best lines, it's very important to know also what is your better skills. If you're better into the thermaling, if you're better in gliding or speeding, because this also determines when to push in a race. It's really pointless to put yourself in a position to force and push in a conditions, first of all, that you don't feel comfortable, too strong conditions or too weak conditions, or I don't know, flying into the wind or something like that. To decide when to push, it's also connected with your skills. So if you, for example, if you are used to fly in weak conditions, try to make that advantage and push then. But it's not so good if you push when it's strong and you're not so good in strong conditions. So of course, ridge flying is one of the points where they allow you more to push and to lead, because then you have less chances to bomb out. Of course, the ridge is much easier and with many marked thermals on the way, with every peak or every ridge there showing you. But as Jože said a few days ago, here also very important point is to not thermal. This is the first rule of flying on the ridge. Do not thermal the ridge. Once you get above the ridge, often it's a sinky air, and if you're flying on the level of the ridge, it's all the way quite a good air that supports you. So on the ridge, you can push a bit stronger to go into a better place, better lift, but also do not climb too much. Flying flats, it's a totally different story. But here, of course, experience is needed, and here the rule that the higher you are, the better. It's very important. So totally opposite to the ridge. Usually on most of the flats, thermals and the wind is more affected the lower you are, and the higher you are, you feel it much less. And often on a triangle tasks and stuff like that, it's very helpful to be high up, just because of not flying into the wind. But also, if you are high, then you can reach more thermals, and especially for the pilots that don't have so much experience with the flats and trigger points, you always get the strongest thermals somewhere above the first half of the height of the day. So the higher you are, you end up in a stronger thermals. The lower you are, the flats usually quite well low, but not so good thermals, and you can end up thermaling lots of weak thermals if you're flying low in the flats, not just because you need the height, but also because you meet a thermal, okay, you try it, it's not so good, maybe you continue, maybe not. While if you're high up, then you meet only the strongest thermals that go all the way to the cloud base. Catching up, it's another super important point during race, where many pilots lose the control and think, okay, now I'm lost and I have to catch up super quick. No, you always catch up slow. It's very, very difficult to catch up the leading gaggle or whoever you're chasing for in one move. So don't try it. You can end up even more in the back. The first rule, once you are already back, don't try something stupid, because you will end up even more in the back, but also try to catch up slowly. With having so many pilots in front of you, it doesn't mean that you need to follow them, but they are marking your air very easy and you can see their mistakes. Often the leading gaggle makes quite a detours to catch a thermal, and if you're in the back, you are catching up just because you are going straight to the thermal instead of looking for the thermal like them. So once you're back, check how many kilometers are left on the task, and then try to catch up slowly. Do not catch up in one move. The final glide was explained also quite nicely by Jože on the first task, but here it's more of a point again of your ability to fly alone or to push alone through the trigger points. And when you are still not on that level, I always suggest that you can just follow the others. On a long competitions, this pays off really well, because being in the goal 20th every day, it's not such a bad thing if you have 4 or 5 tasks. So, and if you're learning. But if you're fighting for the first places, then of course there is many techniques how to beat the others, because then the seconds matter. And one very interesting point is, often when we are in a final glide gaggle just before the finish, you look for the others, and if you want to win the task, let's say, you place yourself into the thermal behind somebody that he doesn't see you when you leave the thermal towards goal, and you wait for the turn, he goes out of the way, and then you gain a lot of seconds, let's say, to win the task. But this is something that it's really on the top level, and for the pilots that we are here and the presentation was done, it wasn't done that much specific. I just wanted to go in a bit just to know what's happening on the top level. But when you're lower, try to be consistent in the goal, and it really doesn't matter if you're 5th or 20th, especially on long competitions. If you saw that the competition will not have so many days and so many tasks, then of course you make the decision depending of your what you want. Either you want to win, or either you want just a good result for some CIVL points or not. Here it matters a lot what you have seen, the weather forecast and the analysis before the comp, but also during the comp. How many days of flying, of tasks will be in a competition often determines your strategy, and usually the strategy at the final glide. Because if you don't have so many flying days, then of course totally worth it to push. And of course, if you don't need the points, now these days we see a lot of people fighting for the national team, fighting for to enter on the Europeans or Worlds, where they need the points. And it's very important to determine your goals already before the competition. If you're fighting for the CIVL points, then 4th is not a bad place. If you're fighting for a podium, then it's probably the worst place to be. Landing at the same place around where you flew, monitoring the conditions will also help you to know if you can go early or late, or monitoring the general area before the comp. As we know that here Mrzliver is very good, and having a lot of lift, for example, and you can leave the ridge early. If you don't know that, or if you haven't flown, and if you haven't asked somebody to tell you, then you end up quite slow. So this is another point that depends of the day and of the place. You have to know where you fly, and if that day have the conditions in front of you to push lower or to stay higher. Usually when you have backwind in any flying places, flats especially, but also on the ridge, if you have backwind, often it's totally worth it if you go towards goal with some slightly higher glide-off ratio that usually you need, because if you don't have any lift on the way or something like that, you can just slow down, fly on trim speed or something like that, and still reach goal and try to win the task. Or if you don't, then you end up similar to where if you don't push. So having backwind really helps you to fight for the win with risking more and still be in goal. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's the last slide. Here, not only the last task, but the last thermaling or whatever. It's not that important. Again, this is very important point. It's not that important to win the task. As I said, pushing a lot and opening a rescue, it's not the best. Pushing a lot and landing early, it's also not the best. You have to remember two very important points into competition flying. First of all, we are racing to the goal. There is no beer if you fly super good but land in front of goal. There is no reward for that also. And also, a very important point, you are racing against the other pilots. Often you can have the chance to beat them by a lot, for example, but you don't need to. You still need to be in front of the others. That's better to be in front of the others 1 minute or 5 seconds than trying to risk and be in front of them 10 minutes and then bomb out early. So we are racing to the goal and we are racing against the others. Keep that in mind. We are not racing against the clock often, except if we have some elapsed time and stuff like that. Then it's difficult to control the others and to know where you are. But racing against the other pilots is also another point that I want to talk, because often we have very aggressive goggles in the past few years, let's say. I'm very happy that I cannot see that pattern here. Both flying days were very calm and very easy thermaling with everybody, but pushing a lot into the gaggle doesn't always gain a lot. You can end up 20 meters higher sometimes, but often somebody else will start pushing and then the whole gaggle starts to dissolve. So aggressive flying and not safe flying, it's not the best option. Again, how to win tasks. Here I also, this is pretty much the end, but I also want to ask you if you have any questions, because often during these presentations there is many people having many questions, but they're afraid to ask or something like that. Keep in mind that even the most stupid questions can help you a lot, and it doesn't matter if you approach somebody that knows a lot or doesn't know a lot. Just ask, always ask everything, from weather to techniques, on takeoff. Be quite aggressive with asking, because that's the only way to learn. So if you have any questions, I think also Gasper, as a very good top pilot, and having me learned a lot from him, he can also help us. And we anyway have this day, we are not so tired, and we can discuss for anything you have in mind that you need today. Yeah.
Yeah, any questions? David?
Both you and Nicole spoke about preparing for a new location and looking at tracks and competition, past competition. Can you speak specifically about what you look for? Just a couple of specific points.
Yeah. Usually, the most important key points are you have to monitor both the terrain but also the tracks and tasks from before. I usually check out tasks, then just track logs from cross-country flying. But finding the home thermals and knowing where they are, usually it's quite easy from the track log, and knowing them before you go to the site and before you ask anyone, it's a very crucial point. Then often, for example, in XA Globe, you have these areas with the most thermals, and having one task of all the pilots' track logs often gives you very good idea of the main thermal areas, thermaling spots, let's say, along the task. So these are the two very crucial points, and of course the main one is just to take a look how and where the tasks are going usually around the area.
Do you fly into the cloud before start?
Good question. This is pretty much forbidden, so you should not do it.
It is forbidden, not pretty much.
You should not do it at all. Of course, we have many pilots flying into the cloud. I've been flying into the cloud for sure, but this you can do this only if you are alone, or if you are on the side somewhere away from the others, or if you really know what to do. But definitely, it's not recommended at all if you do that in any crowd.
So you can't win the task.
I don't think so. Why?
I take part in the Italian Open 2 months ago at Cremona, and there were 120 pilots, and I can show you 2 photos from 2 different tasks. But I was at cloud base with 30 person, really at cloud base, and then I was the first going out, and I can show you the photo with 70 pilots coming out of the cloud.
I understand very well.
Every day, the race director is saying, it's not fair, it's not sporty, you can't do it, it's not allowed. And every day was the same.
I understand very well. Unfortunately, we also had a small situation last year, and I was quite pissed off, and I said that on the presentation, where the experienced pilots were flying into the cloud and then, of course, gaining meters. But for sure, this doesn't work on a long term. First of all, it's not fair. Nobody will like you. Second, you can help to stop this with reporting pilots. I'm organizing comps regularly, 2-3 comps per year, and I haven't had any official complaint on reporting pilots into the cloud. And not only into the cloud, also for aggressive flying. Unfortunately, I know that at top level especially, this is a big problem, especially in the last 4 years, let's say. But being at the cloud on the start cylinder doesn't help you for the task, for sure, because the tasks are so long. And also, nobody likes cheaters, so don't worry. If you fly fair, you will be more respected than cheating and winning, for sure. At least in my eyes. I don't know.
Can you specify what exactly is cloud flying and what is not cloud flying?
Yeah, this is good point. Another typical situation is where sometimes we have 2 different cloud bases, and you end up on one side of the cloud, or more often on one cloud, quite lower than the rest of the people on the other side, or usually on somewhere else, somewhere higher. Cloud flying is as long as you cannot see more than 50% of your surrounding area. So having flying on the side of the cloud doesn't really is cloud flying or is not cloud flying, but it's cloud flying as long as the others cannot see you. If you are on the side of the cloud and everybody else are somewhere very much on the side and there, and you are visible, then of course it's not cloud flying. But if you are entering into the white, for me, if you are entering properly into the white and just coming out for a few seconds, then it's cloud flying, of course. Yeah.
So, as an organizer of the event, do you need an official complaint? Is it not enough that somebody sends you a photo of people in the cloud, or you just see it by the GP? Does an organizer really need an official complaint and 50 euro or whatever and all the official thing? Can you do nothing about it on your own?
Yeah. So, as organizers are not responsible for these things, meet director is. He is responsible for sportive side of the event, and if the meet director is not witness of this event, is not witnessing it, then he needs complaint and proof for sure. Often verbal complaints can be acted on, but this is so difficult, penalties these days for cloud flying, that it's very difficult for a meet director to make this decision. And on a complaint, these days it's done very good analysis of who was in the cloud and who wasn't with the software, with the track logs. And I can say that always when we had the case, not in my competitions, but when I was on World Cups or even smaller cups, always when it was the case that somebody is reported, it was very clearly that he was flying into the cloud, and very easy to punish, let's say, especially if it's on the course. During start cylinder, it's a bit more difficult, especially if many pilots were in and out. But after starting the cylinder, if you see somebody clearly above and or during race, that's of course, now these days we have cameras, and it's very easy to report somebody, let's say. That's why we have the World Cup numbers, for example, just to say this was the guy there at that point, check his track log. Yeah.
Any further questions?
No.
No. We don't have many problems here with cloud flying, huh? If there is any more questions for Martin or for Nicole or for Jože, they will be all here tomorrow. So you can just step to them, and you can discuss with them. You can ask them eye by eye, and you can do the discussion with them. They are, as you can see, they are normal people.
Yeah, I know it's not so easy to think of a question right away and stuff like that, but probably you have a lot of questions during some time of the compass. Gasper said, just approach to anyone, not of us, but anyone that you think might know something, and ask. As I told you, this is one of the most important things. And I also want to ask you if you have any idea, because I do these lectures quite a lot, of what you want to hear next in the future or whatever. Just it will be very helpful for me to know what to do next. Maybe for next year we can do how to deal with competitions when there is no flyable days.